Racism is a terrible sin, especially whenever it is fueled and motivated by sport, and obviously this comes off the back of the racist abuse that was experienced by Sterling, Saka and Rashford after the Euros 2020 final. But I want to talk about why racism is such an awful sin, and it's a sin against its victims, against the people who experience it, but also a sin against God. So I want to talk about this. Right, so humans are made in the image of God. That's the way God created us, and it's what sets us apart from all the animals and pretty much everything else on the earth. And that image of God, it's kind of linked to our purpose and what we're supposed to do on the earth. But what it does is that it gives us infinite value and worth and dignity. I think it's fair to say that it is impossible to overstate how valuable a human life is, because no matter what age or class or gender you are, or any other distinguishing feature that separates you from someone else, regardless of all of those things, you have infinite and equal value from the person beside you. And so whenever we as Christians see people devaluing other people, whenever we see people being used as a means to an end, whenever we see people being treated as if they're worth nothing, we as Christians are supposed to fight against that, whether that comes in the form of abortion or economic injustice or slavery, or in this case racism. Those are things that treat people as if they're of lesser value to other people, and that is wrong. That is a lie. And secondly, then, when it comes to dignity, again, we cannot overstate the infinite and equal dignity that every single human being has, just for being a human, for no other reason aside from they are a human being. And so people's dignity is tied up with the respect and the care that we should show for other people just because they are human. This is contrary to the popular notion in the world that humans can be robbed of their dignity, that I can do something to you that strips you of your dignity. So that is not true. I can treat you, and people can treat other people in a way that disregards their dignity, in a way that acts as if that person does not have dignity, but nothing that we as humans can do can rob other people of their dignity. And the reason for this is because their dignity, as well as their worth, comes from God. It's not derived from yourself. It doesn't come from anything that you're able to do, anything that you're able to be, anything that you are. It comes from God. And so it's not based on how well you can kick a football. It's not based on how well you can score a penalty or how well you play through a tournament. If you're doing well in those things, or if you're doing poorly in those things, that does not change your value, that does not change your dignity, because those two things come from God. And so this is why racism in sport is such a terrible thing, because it tells the lie that your value and that your dignity, what you deserve to be treated like, is entirely dependent on how well you perform. But actually, how well you deserve to be treated is entirely dependent on God, who doesn't change. And so racism is a sin against the person because it tells them that they're not valued, and it treats them in a way that just totally disregards their dignity. And when it's in football, it tells them that their entire worth, their entire value and dignity is entirely dependent on how they play. But then secondly, racism is a sin against God because it's in God's image that we're made. And so to disrespect someone who's made in the image of God is to disrespect God. And you don't want to do that, because realistically, even though most of the people who engage in this racist abuse aren't going to be punished by the government, they're not going to have to pay a fine, they're not going to have to go serve time in prison or on community service, even though that is the case, none of their sins and none of their crimes will go unpunished, because God is going to judge those people, and he's going to judge them with full knowledge of their hearts and full knowledge of their actions. And so their sin is going to be punished, and facing that punishment will either be them or it will be Jesus. And personally, for their sake, I'm hoping for the second one. I'm hoping that it's Jesus, because listen, they don't deserve to go unpunished. They don't deserve to have Jesus pay the punishment for them, but neither do I. I've sinned, I've done wrong, I've sinned against other people, I've sinned against God, I've treated people as if they're not made in the image of God, as if they don't have infinite value and dignity and worth. I'm guilty of that, but Jesus has already paid the punishment for me for those things, and so I'm hoping that those people come to faith who have been engaged in this sort of stuff, so that they don't have to pay it, because that's not something that we should wish on anyone, even though they deserve it. That's just the scandalous grace of God. It is amazing. But that doesn't change the fact that we as Christians are to take a stand against racism, because it's a total disrespect and it's a total devalue of the things which God says deserve respect and deserve value. It mocks our creator, it mocks the one who we are claiming to worship. And so as part of our God-given mission to bring goodness to the earth and to bring justice and love, we've got to stand against racism. I've got some other videos on like racism and justice and stuff, so if you're interested, do feel free to go check those out. But for now, I will see you in the next video. God bless.